I'm Gary Madison of the Farm Credit Council.
I'm Scott Marlowe. Right?
Actually, he's Gary. I'm Scott. Oh wait, no.
Yeah.
Well, they run now, really.
So this is all about farm entrepreneurship. How do you know financial management, all those kinds of other things. We tried to lay out a quick people. Come on in. Come on in. Come on. Oh no, come on in. It's a good small group so we can have real discussion and make sure, the big thing is make sure that if there are things on your mind that you really want to know, that they get asked and get answered, and we'll talk about them and all that kind of other stuff. So actually, my name is Scott Marlowe. I work with an organization called the Rural Advancement Foundation International. We're based in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. We do a lot of different stuff. We can talk about that later on. Gary is.
I work for the Farm Credit Council, which is the trade association for the farm credit system. Farm Credit is a cooperative of cooperatives. There's 76 local, kind of like credit unions for farmers called Farm Credit. Down here would be known as First South Farm Credit, and a couple of other ones. Nationwide systems, sort of, because they're all independently operated. And I work for the Trade Association in DC on young beginning small farmer stuff.
Why don't we go around? Let's just go around the room and let us know. Just say who you are, what and what your situation is. What brings you in here? Do you have a farm? Are you not? You want to? Where are you in the process? And if there are any sort of burning questions that brought you here today, let's just sort of get them out of the table a little bit. You guys want to start over there and we'll just go around?
Sure. I'm Seth Copeland. I have Leon Pig and currently small kitchen and shoot load. And don't have a farm. I am planning on planting an orchard in 3 months. But that one's a year or so. That's
Okay, good. Good start. You're with him. And she's with you? Okay, we got it. Thank you. This is a package deal here in front row. Yes, sir. Leonard? LeGrand, sorry.
LeGrand Elliott, Footprint Farms, Jackson, Mississippi. We do some organic, we do grow houses, and we also do forestry.
How long have you been in business?
I've been doing forestry about 7 years, and we've been doing high tones for about 4 years.
Okay. Good.
My name is Julie Roberts. I'm from Franklin County, Mississippi. I don't really have a farm right now. I'm just here because I love it, and I one day will have a farm, and I think my family will support that leap. So I'm learning.
Julie, not Julia.
Right.
Okay.
I'm named after my great aunt, who is Julia.
A cousin who lives down the hill from the Julia in California.
Oh, cool.
And she's nice, she says, but nobody says that in the tabloid stuff.
Right now, yeah. All I have is a bunch of chickens and some dogs and kids.
That's a farm?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you selling the kids for these days?
Yeah. Cheap.
Is it by the pound or on the hook?
Yeah.
I'm Tommy Foote, and I had no connection to a farm, but I just think this stuff's pretty cool, and so I want to learn some more about it. Why not?
Okay.
My name's Sharon Scott. I'm from Lucille, Mississippi. Me and my husband have recently just started a new farm. We're going to do pasture-raised poultry, pork, and beef.
Started meaning?
We did an internship up in North Mississippi at Beaver Dam Fresh Farms this year. We just got done at the beginning of August. And so by starting our farm, we just have a couple of laying hens right now. Well, 130, I guess it's more than a couple.
Yeah.
And we plan to do the meat broilers in the spring. And we have 2 pigs right now.
On your way.
Yep, just starting.
I'm Rebecca Bates. I work for Mississippi State. I'm the extension agent in Lincoln County.
I'm Jason McDonald. I'm a farmer, I guess.
He is.
We have a roofer, I'm not sure.
I have a tea farm, and I just started it, and timber farm, and we got chickens and turkeys and dogs and no kids, so anyway.
Incredible tea plantation. We're really excited
We're
to have
knee-deep
that in
in
Lincoln
tea.
County.
Where is that?
It's in Brookhaven.
So how long have you been doing that?
3 years now, and we just planted last year and this year.
And how long does it take till harvest?
3 years.
3 years.
And then it's every 14 to 21 days for 100 years.
Good, probably a good plan, good
Yeah,
horizon
yeah.
out there. We skipped our cameraman. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to introduce yourself? I hate to leave anybody out.
I'm James Barron. I'm your cameraman.
Awesome. James, we're looking forward to seeing what you do.
I'm Patty Alderman. We have Alderman Farms, and we are growing captured meat also. We have some chickens that we're fixing to be harvesting. We have captured pork, and we have one beef that we'll be raising. And we also do organic vegetables for our farmers market, and I make lots of bread for our farmers market.
My name is Jerry Fisher, and we are beginning goat farmers, meat goat farmers.
How beginning?
Excuse me?
How beginning are you?
Very beginning. We have 10 goats.
Okay. You sold any?
No, one is a kid. We haven't got to that level. That's the kid I got.
You get to sell your kids. Excellent. We were talking about that before.
I'm Callie Nolan. I am the director of a nonprofit that's in Clarksville, Mississippi. We started out as an after-school program, but we've just now recently started to develop a job training program that's going to be focused around vegetable farming. And so we're very new. We just planted our fall garden on wet soil.
I'm William Kozeski, and this is my wife. I'm the director of that program, and our first season, our first garden is doing well. We're going to hopefully start a farmer's market and community gardens in Clarksville this year.
So you got a social mission associated with the farm.
Correct.
And
This is my wife. I like it.
okay, you just sort of gestured vaguely in a direction. I wasn't sure where we were. Never mind. I thought he said wives. I thought so too. Never mind.
Okay, I'm Bobby Miller from Isola, Mississippi. I came from a long history of farmers, the father, grandparents, and all. And right now, I've been into the farming business myself. I'm with this Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative. We have a farm group, and I have been growing goats for the dog killer, and I'm a vegetable farmer, and I have hoop house and irrigation system set up, and we grow hogs and stuff like that.
I'll go next. I'm Ben Maddox. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and actually work for a farmer's cooperative in that state, and we do pasture, poultry, pork, and beef.
And you farm?
I'm a manager in the cooperative, so I guess you asked for us to say why we're here, and I'm here because we're trying to figure out how to improve the bottom line for the farmers in the cooperative.
Okay. Well, we got that stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to go there.
Hi, I'm Caroline Barrios. I'm a grad student on this and a researcher with the Center for Population Studies. So here to learn about the process. I used to work on farms, and it's a long dream of mine to have my own. So
Well, best way to have a successful farm operation or start a successful farm operation is have a good job. Yeah. It's a laugh line that's true. Lee.
I'm Lee Bailey. We have Salad Days, which is a hydroponic farm in Flora, Mississippi. We are not quite a year in. We are selling mostly wholesale, but we do some retail farmers markets. And I am in this session because I want to know why hydroponic farms can't get any financing.
That's my fault.
At first South turned us down, so but we ended up with an SBA loan and had to do everything private with no grants, no nothing beneficial at all. And I have a big beef about that. So I looked into every possible avenue that for 2 years, I tried to find something that would help us and we didn't find it.
You should have done this 2 years ago.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm Jesse Bowie. I'm Old Brook Organics. I'm a certified organic through CCOF out of California. Mixed vegetables and melon and organic.
And you're not a beginning farmer?
Well, I just got recertified, so this will be. I'm finishing year 2.
You are good.
Yeah, I'm in healthcare otherwise. So.
I'm Jerry Palmer. I have 10 acres over in Rankin County, which part of it we collect, raise, and sell heirloom flower bulbs. Market it through the market bulletin, which is free every time if you subscribe to it. I've been doing that been collecting for about 25 years and been selling them for about 4.
My name is Jeff Jigger. I'm relatively new to the area. I've been here for a couple of years, but I'm just interested in farming, especially organic and sustainability. I don't have a farm right now, but you never know one day. I did work on a farm years ago, on a blueberry farm, so it's kind of interesting.
Absolutely. And we had a couple of folks who came in later. If you want to just, yeah, go ahead.
My name is Mary Travis. I manage a two-run farm in Bond, Mississippi. We raise meat, sheep, and beef, and goats off and on. And I'm here just to glean whatever I can to help me do my job better and help the farm.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Schelt, and I'm a edible landscaping contractor. I have my own business, but would like to be in commercial agriculture one day. Things organically and sustainably.
Cool. Well, we're going to be here for a while, so get comfortable. If it gets too hot, we did open a window. Some folks were saying it had gotten real hot once before. We'll try to cool things down, and so we can just sort of settle in and figure it out. Oh, I'm sorry, you came in too. You didn't get a chance.
Paul Darby. I work with the Mississippi Association of Cooperatives.
Oh, fantastic. Just so that you know sort of where we're coming from, we thought we'd take a couple minutes and just say more about where we're coming from. You want to go ahead?
Glad there's another flower grower in the room. I was a commercial cut flower grower in New Hampshire for 30 years, doing anemones as cut flowers, and also had a small herd of beef animals that we sold as free feed, which worked out well. There's more putting those two kinds of agriculture together than you might think, because you need a walk-in cooler for flowers, and you need a place to hang meat, walk-in cooler for beef. So when I built the cooler, I put a rack in the back, and that worked just fine, except for those few occasions where I forgot to tell the folks that came in to sort the flowers that there was going to be some dead meat hanging in with the flowers. And a few screaming incidents got it, so we had to improve my communication skills on that. It was a learning experience. And as a full-time farmer, was elected to my local farm credit board, served there for 15 years. And served on, as part of that 15 years, was on this national board that I now work for that trade association. So I stopped farming in 2008 after having a sit down with my 3 sons and wife and saying, okay, have we gotten all the fun we can out of this business? Oil prices were $4 a gallon. We had to reinvest in heating equipment. We made the mistake of educating our kids, and they no longer wanted to work for subsistence wages. So we decided that we would move on to career number 2, which was in Washington.
Did you miss it?
I still own the farm. This summer we cleared 80 acres, intending for 1 or more sons and me, when I retire, to go back to raising cattle. So local beef is part of the future. So yes, I miss it. I miss the cattle more than I miss the flowers.
And I'll brag on Gary a little bit, which is that within the Farm Credit Council, Gary's been an extraordinary advocate to help open up doors, the kind of problems that you're talking about, to really help open up doors for smaller scale beginning farmers for the kinds of agriculture that we're talking about here, and to help the lending community, especially the farm credit lending community, be much more open and understanding when someone comes in the door and says, you know, I'm going to do hydroponic lettuce, so that's not a foreign, it's not just, what are you talking about? And so just to sort of give Gary his props, he's been an amazing advocate within that system for opening up their lending to folks like us, like me, and like you, yeah. My name is Scott Marlowe again. I work for a nonprofit organization. We're called the Rural Advancement Foundation International. We're based in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. I'm not a farmer. I grew up visiting my grandparents' farm in Florida. I like a paycheck. I like air conditioning. I like using my brain. You know, it's a thing. I don't want to be a farmer.
You say the farmers don't use it. Logically, right?
I'm just kidding. Anyway, I walked into that one. We're setting the tone early. Okay. The reason why I started doing talks on financial issues for beginning farmers is that for about 12 years, what I did was run a farm hotline, where a couple times a week we got phone calls from farmers who were about to lose their farms. So my job was to be the person who picked up the phone and got the call that was, they're coming for my equipment on Friday, what do? I just got my letter of foreclosure. I've had to call the sheriff on potential suicides. I've sat at kitchen tables with families who are about to lose everything that they had. And I started going to beginning farmer sessions going, wow, if these people follow this advice, they're going to be in my office in three years. I give them 3 years before they're calling me. And so I felt like I do these talks, I have these conversations because my feeling is I know what sitting at that kitchen table is like. I've sat at it with people. My family lost the farm back when I was a kid, and I remember what that experience was like for my family. I've seen what other families have gone through with it. And if I can help you not get there, even if that means you decide maybe this isn't the right thing, or, you know, maybe I should do it as a hobby instead of going all in, then in my book, I've done you a favor. So one of our staff was with a gathering of people who wanted to farm, and he said, yeah, I work for Agripreneurs. They said, oh, you work with that Scott guy. And he was like, yeah, I do. And he said, that's that guy that goes around and tells people not to farm, isn't it? I was like, I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. So what Gary and I have in common is a very strong commitment for the need for folks who are getting into farming to really understand the nuts and bolts and the downside. There's a lot out there that's going, yay, be a farmer. And we're like, well, let's talk about what it really takes, how it really goes, and let's give you the real information.
Which is my point to brag on you, on Scott, as far as being in the sustainable agriculture world and non-traditional agriculture. Scott and Raffi are very business driven, and that allows me to work with him easily because we do understand what a bottom line is. He gets to it in a different way than I would. And we can both talk about triple bottom line. We know how to do that too.
Yeah.
But there's still an actual bottom line in numbers and profitability that has to be there in order for that farm to continue. And as long as we're agreeing on that, we've got a whole lot in common.
Right. So what we designed this to do, first of all, to answer your questions or to help you answer your questions about knowing, how do I get in, how do I not, how do I make a decision, how do I choose when to buy something or not, how do I manage credit, how do I know how to do these things, and how do I know whether I'm going in the right direction or not. We sort of, basically what Gary and I did was took a set of presentations that each of us do in different places and sort of glommed them all into one PowerPoint in semi-random order, not completely random order, but just sort of threw them all in. So what we're going to do is start having this discussion, and it is a discussion, we're completely, throw out questions, if stuff's not clear, please stop us. We got plenty of time, and we don't mind talking. What we'll do is, we probably will not do, we won't do so much click, click, click. What we'll do is bounce around through this a little bit, depending on where the discussion takes us and how that goes. Where I think we wanted to start,
I'll go to the first slide and see what we decided.
What did we say? Oh, that's my friend John. I love these. A couple of years ago, this is all it's. I was doing a thing on how to make $1 million farming, and it's the old joke that is, how do you make $1 million farming? Start with $2 million. You heard that one? But then I Googled it and started having. This is back in 2011. All these headlines came up. These are real headlines. Want to make more than a banker? Become a farmer. Farmers will be the next millionaires and will drive Maseratis. Is that y'all's experience? That's pretty much it. You've got your Maserati going. So part of the point of why I put this up there is there are people in farming who make a lot of money. And I think it's important for us to understand what's the difference, right? Why is it that some people make a lot of money, and part of that is management and how they do it, and part of that is the environment in which they're working and what they're producing and for what markets and all that kind of other stuff. But it is about, at a certain point, it's about having to make money. Those crack me up. Oh, this one's mine. Yeah, I'm sorry. Tanstoffel. How many people are familiar with that line, Tanstoffel? I've heard it before. That's an old one. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And I've had a lot of folks, especially young folks, come to me and go, I was on a panel with a guy who said, I should be able to farm however I want to, wherever I want to, and feed my community, and be able to buy the land and do this whole thing. I'm like, great. On what planet? I don't get to live in whatever house I want to. I don't get to drive whatever car I want to. Wanting to farm and to feed your family and your community and to do it in a way that is that addresses the triple bottom line and works with nature and all those kind of things is a fabulous, wonderful, beautiful, noble thing to do. But just because you're doing that doesn't mean that you're any more deserving of resources, access, all those kinds of other stuff than anyone else does. And frequently with people in the beginning farmer community, what I get is this sense of, why is no one making this easy for me? And it's never been easy. And everyone goes, well, it's really hard now. No, it's never been easy. Land has never been cheap.
I've looked back historically at values of land. I got an economist as a colleague in my office, and looked back, and there has never been a time, possible exception of when the government gives away land, that you could cash flow the land that you buy in the year that you buy it, growing something, right? Okay, so if you pay $100 an acre, there's never been a time where you could grow $200 an acre worth of stuff on it. It just doesn't happen that way. If you're the first one there, you can cut down the trees and sell the potash or sell the trees, or you harvest what's there, you can do it. But from a farming perspective of clearing that land, putting a crop on it, and paying off that land, it just doesn't happen. It's not a common thing at all. Niche crops, sure, you can do it, but it's not common. So, I had flowers, niche crop. I could pay it off very quickly, high margin. But it's unusual in agriculture to find something that nobody else has, that you can actually cash flow the land you're buying. Buying land is a long-term prospect that you're really doing an investment, that you're expecting an appreciation on that land. And you're going to capture that appreciation at some time in the future.
What's the number? Approximately 80% of farmers make more of their household income from off-farm jobs than they do from the farm. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. About 80% of farmers make more money from their off-farm job than they do from the farm. So one of the conversations we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes is when do I get to quit my day job? So, we'll get into that in a minute. Where do we go? Oh, why don't you want to talk about goals?
Sure. It is all that, I won't bother reading all that. You know about goal setting, because most of us manage to fool ourselves about what we really want to do. Articulating our own goals to ourselves is very difficult. I'm going to tell you in a little while, write it down, and I know you're going to say, oh yeah, I know this, I don't have to write it down. Your goals change. Your goals change from day to day, week to week. If you write it down, don't you wish you had a box from high school and you could go back and you could open it up and maybe have a journal or something? And it's what, I want it to be an astronaut or a farmer, whatever it is. When your goals start to get more specific, they change and they change over time. When you're starting a family, your goals are different than before you're married. And 10 years after, when you have kids that you're looking at college, they're different. Setting the goal allows you to know, have a background against which to measure what it is that you want to do next. If you don't have a goal that you can identify, then it's really hard to know if you're making progress towards it.
So one of the goals that I've gotten, I get a lot of calls from people who say, I just inherited this piece of land, my aunt died, and 6 of us own this piece of land and I now own it, and what do we do, and we want to, what are we going to do with it, and those kinds of things. Sound familiar? I get a lot of those calls. And the first question that I always ask is, what are your goals here? Because frequently what people will say is that my goal is that when our kids, when the next generation get to be old enough, we want them to have the opportunity to farm. Okay, well, if that's the case, what we're talking about is setting parameters around an operation that minimizes risk to that land. We'll talk about risk. Risk is something you're going to hear about a lot today. Because a lot of beginning farmers that I work with, they want to think in terms of potential of income. How much money can I make? And what I want you to get used to thinking about is how much money can I lose? Right? What is my risk profile and how am I going to mitigate that risk? But if someone comes in and says, my goal is to hold on to this land so that it's available to the next generation, then what we're going to talk about is really low risk. That means don't borrow. That means do things that have very low overhead, that are easy. You're not going to make a lot of money, but you're not going to risk it. And that's very different from someone who says, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to have a business, I want to build this thing, I want to do that. That's a whole different set. So understanding what this experience is, what your end goal on this is really important, because it's going to really radically change how we approach structuring that business. I had a family who the other part of it is, we're going to talk a lot about finances, but sometimes other things trump finances. So, for instance, I had a family that we worked with that had a farm that frankly was failing. And we sat down with them and they said, look, and part of it was they knew that they were losing money and there was not a lot that they could do to turn it around quick. And what they said was, help us figure out a way to hold on to the farm until our kids graduate high school. We want to raise our kids on the farm. We want them to graduate high school on the farm and in this community. So help us buy 3 years. That's worth whatever that costs. Then we'll let go of it and we'll go do something else. But we want to have this for our kids to graduate high school. And that trumps straight up, understanding those kinds of parameters. And it doesn't have to be that negative. It can be really positive or other things. But understanding those values and why you're doing this. What are you doing this for? Are you doing it for your kids? Are you doing it because it's fun? I mean, if you're doing it because it's fun and it's something you enjoy, if you're not having any fun, there's an important point where you go, I'm not having fun here. Well, then let's figure out what you're doing it for.
Which is kind of like building in escape routes. I know we're sounding negative here, but this is the slap upside the head that you get at the beginning. We'll get more positive. But thinking about escape routes, if you sign up for a 30-year mortgage and you are planning on paying that off over 30 years with your income from farming, you have to be really confident that you're going to be able to change what you're doing. Nobody farms for 30 years and does the same thing. It's a different business. Markets change. Your physical capabilities change. Your labor pool changes. Other costs change. It's a really long bet. 30-year mortgage on a house, a residential house, is not so bad because you go get a job and you have skills and you can reprogram your skills by going to school. You can make it work. For farm business, from a lender perspective, and this isn't a seminar on borrowing money, but the best thing, as Scott said, is don't borrow money. It should be your plan for the future. But if you do borrow money, it's based usually on a 2 or maybe a 3-year business plan, but the mortgage typically goes out 10 years, 15 years. The expectation of a lender is that if you can show me a 2-year plan that's good enough, you can make money for 20 years, but it's going to change. You can't just keep doing that 2-year business plan over and over again. It's highly unusual to be able to do that because so much other stuff changes. From a life perspective and a goals perspective, if you lock yourself into a goal that says, I want to be a farmer, and you go long, right, you make a 30-year bet on that, you have to be a farmer for 30 years. You got no way out. Your life changes. You get disabled. I mean, we'll get to the D's later. A whole bunch of things can happen. And if you don't build into your planning, irrespective of your goals, how to get out of it, that's when you get to catastrophe. The people that Scott just mentioned that have, can you get us 3 more years? They were at the end of that road. A lot of lenders, well, Farm Credit, when they lend money, generally is really short term, tries to compress that as much as possible because it's essentially a commercial loan. So my land started out on a 15-year mortgage when I had an unfortunate event, freezing a greenhouse just before Valentine's Day, and my income suffered by about 1/3 that year, which is most of my net profit. I had to re-amortize that loan. I had room to stretch to 20 years, right? That's how you, as a lender, that's how you cover somebody's loss. The problem is, I'm good for 20 years, but I'm stuck now for 20 years in that. And I worked hard over the next few years to pay that down, so I was back on more of a 10-year term of loan so that I could say at any given time, okay, I'm done. Well, not at any given time. At the end of any 10 years, I'm done. I've got everything paid for. So that when I got to 2008, everything was paid for.
What about insurance for a loss like that?
Crop insurance? At that time, I could have had AGR, adjusted gross revenue light. It was a really bad deal economically. It did not work. I had essentially one crop, and AGRs meant, just like whole farm revenue is meant now for 3 or more crops, so the premium was very high, the payout was very low, and I essentially self-insured. I took earnings and put it into a second water system and second well, second generator, electric generator, just second and third heating systems, just redundancy, self-insured.
There's something I want to throw in. You were saying, we're starting out negative, and I have that reputation. It's an occupational hazard. It's an occupational hazard from the stuff that I do. But one of the things that I wanted to say was, to me, hearing the bad news is a gut check. The successful farmers that I know, when you sit there and go, okay, here's the bad stuff and here's the bad stuff, they're like, all right, give it to me. All right, bring it on, let's go. I want to know what this is, come on. And it's kind of energizing, right? It is that sense of, there's a sense of competition. It's not going to beat me. All right, yeah, let's deal with it, okay.
Incompetence. And I've got that tool in my pocket that can fix that.
That's right, give me I want to know the whole thing. I'm gonna, and sometimes I've talked to classes of beginning farmers about this stuff, and they kind of go, oh God, maybe I shouldn't do this. I'm like, look, I'm one guy, right? You're gonna listen to me for 3 hours this afternoon or 2 hours, whatever you're gonna listen to me. If listening to me be negative makes you go, oh wow, maybe I should. Take the hint. It's not about me, right? It's what I know a lot of successful farmers. There are a lot of folks who do it well and do it and are really good, and they're like, all right, buddy, let's go. We got a problem, let's fix it, let's roll. You know, don't waste my time just talking about how do we go? And it is that hunger for give me the real deal. Let me know what this is. All right, you got another mountain? Let's go. We're going to go, because farming is going to be a set of challenges over and over and over and over again that you have to climb over and get past. And if if listening to me is a big challenge, think about it, right? It ain't about me, right? So anyway, I am, in these talks, I am purposefully negative. It is not a coincidence. There are plenty of people who can tell you, there are plenty of people who will tell you how wonderful it is to be a beginning farmer, and isn't it fabulous? We need more. I was talking to a friend of mine who does advocacy work about this talk, about the bad stuff, and she was like, oh, you don't want to do that. And it's like, why not? And she said, because you don't want to discourage them. We need beginning farmers. Don't discourage them. We need beginning farmers. Yeah, people like me and Gary, we need beginning farmers. We need you to want to be farmers. I get paid based on how many people there are an awful lot of organizations who got an awful lot of money from the government to convince a whole bunch of people that they want to be beginning farmers. It's the beginning farmer industrial complex. There's a whole lot of people who get paid based on there being a whole bunch of people who are beginning farmers. And so that gets to be, the question is not, do we need beginning farmers? The question is, do you need to be a beginning farmer? And what is the right thing for you to do in your life? And what we're trying to do is to give you both sides of that coin. There are plenty of places to get the happy stuff. We're going to give you the other stuff. I'm going to give you the other stuff.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about goals. And the example I've got is about vegetable growing. Because we're going to go through, and I don't even want to say what we're going to do. We'll just do it rather than me giving you the introduction. A lot of this starts, if you hadn't caught on here about setting objectives, is understanding yourself and your own capabilities, your capacity to deal with risk, and most of all, self-discipline. If you can't, farming is the ultimate self-discipline, right? Farmers are biological change management experts. They make their living by managing a biological system. You put a seed in the ground, you harvest the corn, or whatever it is. You're managing change. If you can't wait for that seed to come up and harvest it, like you want to eat the baby lettuce and you never let it get big enough to get it, take it to market as a finished product because you want to go out and taste it every day. If you don't have that self-discipline, you can't make it in farming. It's extremely difficult because farming, in most types of farming, has very seasonal income. If not price changes, if not all other factors that make income go up and down. For a lot of farmers, it's a whole bunch of planting expenses in the spring and then harvest expenses and one sale of the crop in the fall. Managing that capability to know where your cash is and when you can get at it is one of the hardest things about being in small business of any type, but in farming in particular. So, you don't have to raise your hand. You're not asking a question, but if every time you get 20 bucks in your pocket, you feel like you have to spend $19.95 of that, you probably shouldn't be a farmer. Because that putting off purchases is how you can be successful, because ultimately, like Scott said, you're managing risk.
Back to your picture of the farmer's market. I sat at dinner. I happened to sit at dinner with a friend of mine who farms and sells at a farmer's market close, a well-known farmer's market very close to where we were, and he was really glad because he said, "I'm thinking about getting out." And we had it was at this whole dinner, and I wound up spending the whole time talking to him about this decision of getting out. And what it boiled down to for him was that he had discovered that he was an introvert. He had figured out that he was really introverted. And that process of 3 times a week having to stand there and listen to the same questions over and over again and to talk to people and have them come up and say, so, how do you cook this? And, all those kinds of other things completely drained him. And he was out. He was just empty. And so knowing who you are and what you do well is a very important part of designing what kind of farming you want to do.
So I had to skip ahead to get to this, because I firmly believe that I have never met anybody with all three of these skills in one person. Most of us are good at one. I was a production guy, and you may guess I'm also a little bit of a marketing guy because I'm up here flapping my gums. I like the production stuff. I like putting the seeds in the ground. I got to breed my own F1 hybrids. That was part of my business. I like plumbing. I like electrical. I like the computer control network. I'm a production guy. I like to do things. And then I like to talk about it. I'm not a financial guy. I had to access that skill set in a different way. It's expensive, but how I did it was I married it. It's a long-term investment. But, sorry about that. This financial skills, this is a happy part here, are the easiest skill set to buy or rent. You can hire a bookkeeper type person up in New Hampshire. I would expect to pay $25 an hour maybe for someone who I could bring a box full of receipts every month and put it down, and I would get back a QuickBooks file with everything put in there. Or if I had some specialized management software, I would have that filled out by that person. It's the easiest skill set to buy or rent. And it's much better to spend some money on it to get it done than it is to say, I don't need to do that because I'm not big enough yet. Record keeping from the very beginning is essential. A new good reason is crop insurance. You cannot affect it. I shouldn't say you can't get it. It's very difficult at a reasonable cost to get whole farm crop insurance if you don't have 5 years worth of records. Now, if you're a beginning farmer, there's still a way to get it. It just makes the insurance more expensive because you don't have a track record. It's harder to get a loan if you don't have 3 years of crop experience, and certainly 3 years of earnings experience, like whatever you've done for a job. So financial skills are ultimately easy to access. You just have to know that it's worth the effort to do it because it makes everything else that you do measurable, quantifiable, predictable, and plannable for the future, which is in essence what you're always trying to do. You're always trying to plan for the future. So I'm doing this thing so I don't make you dizzy when I go back and forth on all this stuff. Okay. Part of the problem is defining success. A lot of beginning farmers define success in terms of how many acres they have. If I only had 300 acres, if I only had a 300 horsepower tractor, if I only had 300 cows, everything would be great. That's a false type of objective in my mind because it's not identifying what you love about what you do. You really should, I think you said before about being happy. If you can't figure out what makes you happy in farming, maybe you're just an unhappy person. So you probably shouldn't farm because there's so much unhappiness that generates from farming. But you need to be able to manage it. Farmers should be optimists, in my view. You should be an optimist because you're just counting on things to go your way. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. If you fail to plan, you are put in a situation where it's really tough to be an optimist. If you plan and then you fail, you can say, well, wait a minute, I got all these contingencies. One of them's going to work. I'll figure this out. I can fix it. Farmers are the ultimate fixers. If your idea of success includes net profit to meet your goals for your family and your business, then you've put yourself in a different category of understanding that if you want to keep farming, you have to earn enough money to keep body and soul together, to keep shoes on the kids, feed them every once in a while, and be able to have some resiliency to be able to keep going and keep doing what you want to do, what makes you happy. I refer to my farming career as a really good excuse not to have a real job for 30 years. My goal, my mission, that's coming up here. My vision was to raise my kids on a farm. I got to do it with flowers and with beef cattle, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. And when the fun was over, they stopped doing it and went and did something else. It's okay. It doesn't make you bad. I don't think it makes me bad. Thanks. But your vision,
That doesn't make you.
there are other things. Your vision of what you want needs to include how you're going to keep being able to do it, which I would say includes some net profit. And you can plan to be happy in a business plan. If you haven't guessed, we're headed towards a business plan here.
Should we do the target?
Sure. Cover the screen so we don't make it busy.
I gotta find it.
It's south of there. Down. Don't worry, we're not going to do all these slides.
Is that the air conditioning that's on, or is that
Yeah, that's
heat?
air.
What's that?
Is it the
Air that's on, or is that the heat that's hooked on?
No idea.
They could put the air on earlier.
It says cool up here and auto for the fan.
Okay.
All right, it's a little cool.
So, will that detector go open back there?
I think it is. It feels like there's some airflow coming.
Maybe if you lift up the...
Is there heat coming out?
Lift the blinds and open the window, maybe we'll get some airflow.
No, it is very hot.
We're not helping that today either. So, one of the things that I think is important in terms of talking about how we, the goals that Gary was talking about, and it's also when we see farms succeed or not. A lot of times when you take classes in beginning farmer stuff, and this is my sort of visual. So the first thing that you always get is, okay, how to do a return on each crop, right? How much money are you going to make on your carrots, or how much are you going to make on your calves, right? And that's really basic. Can I sell it for more than I can grow it for? But then there's also a return on sort of each market, and that is, sometimes like if you go to the farmer's market, it is, I'm not going to make much money on my strawberries, but they're going to bring people in, and that's going to help me sell arugula that I make a lot of money on. Actually, probably nobody's making money on arugula, but you know what I mean. You're making money. But that's sort of looking at whole markets or whole that's your variable costs, that's your production costs, and that production return. The third is your whole farm return. So when you do whole farm return, that has to include things like financing, how much are you paying for your tractor, the other ones include labor and things like that. But the whole farm return, that is, what's your mortgage payment, what's your tractor payment, what's your, all of those pieces that go together into that farm business. But the truth is that where farms are won and lost is at the outer link, at the outer loop, which is household. It's about your household. It's about the household. It's not just about the farm operation. It's about how much do you have in student loans? What are you carrying in? It's about what happens with your parents. It's about do your parents get sick? Does somebody in the family have an accident? It's about how much you need to spend to send your kids to college. There's a whole series of things like that are whole household costs. And one of the reasons why we talk so much about off-farm income because at that household level, if you have other income coming in, that's a great buffer against a lot of those things that can happen to farm income and some of those things that go back and forth. So one of the reasons why I started doing this talk was because most of the beginning farmer programs I was going to, they were dealing with either with this and maybe this and once in a while that. But they really weren't talking about this. They weren't talking about the whole household.
Which is how a lender looks at it. When you go in for a loan, remember this isn't a seminar on how to borrow money. The lender starts at household expense and works in because they know that the first checks that you're going to write, the last check you're going to write is going to be for the mortgage or maybe the electric bill. The first check is to take care of the kids and all the household expenses you have to have. So that money has to be secure before anybody's going to talk about lending you money for some other harebrained scheme that you've got about making money growing stuff. Seed in the ground.
We'll talk about this more later on, but any guess what is the thing that we see that, in my experience, the thing that takes 80% of the farms out that we work with. We actually did a back of the envelope look. And there was one thing that hit 80% of the farms that we work with. What do you think it was? What's that?
Diesel.
And I'll give you a hint. It was not a direct farm expense.
Braces.
Oh, it's close. No, taxes are important, and we've often had people tripped up by taxes. And there are a lot of different implications, but that's not it.
Healthcare.
Healthcare. 80% of the farms that we've worked with, and it's not just a lack of health insurance, it's being underinsured. It does not take much. So, you have a farm, you have two people working the farm, you have one person working the farm and they break their arm. Doesn't even have to be tragic. Break your arm, what happens? You miss a week, and suddenly you have an extra $3,000 or $4,000 in bills. Probably don't have insurance. So you're looking at out-of-pocket costs for that, and it's looking at, so what happens, you're going to miss 3 farmers markets. And that's frequently enough to do it. So those health insurance costs are a huge, it's one of the, to me, one of the, I always try to think of, if you don't remember anything else that I tell you, this is one of the things that I want you to walk away remembering in your head. Not having health insurance. Farming is always one of the top 5 most dangerous professions, especially if you are a young family and looking at the possibility of having children. Not having health insurance is a bad, bad thing. That's one of those that can get you in real trouble.
Before we leave this slide, as farm business people, you should have back of the envelope or off the cuff sort of estimate for each of these in your mind,
right,
so that you know what you're making money on. And if you haven't done a enterprise analysis for the arugula or whatever, make it up. You need to have a goal in mind. It's easier to think about a return on each market. If you go to a farmer's market, how much do you have to do in gross sales to pay you to go to that? You don't exactly have to know your net. You don't. I'm not going to go to that market because I didn't make $500 in sales. Set it. I don't know what it is for you, but set a goal in your mind so you know when to say no. When not to do something is pretty important. And for each of these rings, you should be able to do. You should. Well, how much does it take to run your household? You kind of got to know that when you start. Add up your bills. If you're not keeping financial records before you farm, you're going to have a real hard time doing it when you farm, and you don't have much to base it on. I mean, you can look back at your checkbook and you kind of piece it together what you spent money on last year. You need to know that.
So you want to do the... Okay, we'll do that quickly.
Back here. Because knowing all of this stuff that I'm going to go through here, this is all downloadable at farmbiztrainer.com, farmbiztrainer.com, and I've got a slide with the address on there, so you'll see it again, farmbiztrainer.com, and there's a little tab right on the landing page that says resources. And this is a one-page business plan, and so you can download. This is a blank. You can download the example. You can download, most importantly, the active spreadsheet that we're going to be heading towards. Because we're going quickly, the important part of this is this acronym here of specific, measurable, attainable, rewarding time. If you can't identify those characteristics of a goal and write them down, then it's a dream, it's not a goal. And why I say write it down is so that you can look at it next week, next month, next year. I'm not saying fill this out and expect to go get a loan. That's not what this is for. This is a device to help you think about it. If you think of this as keep one in the glove compartment of the pickup truck, so that when you have a good idea, you write it down, and then you say, oh, wait a minute, I have to write down, it has to be very specific. How am I going to know if I achieve the goal? Is it rewarding to me? Do I get anything out of it? Can I really do it? And when's it going to be done by? And that's the killer for most people. I'll do it someday. If you don't write down when it is going to be completed by, you're probably never going to get it completed. The example that you'll see on the next slide are based on these or categories of risk. There's another one that I left off that's called legal, which hopefully you don't have to write a whole bunch of planning about. That means buy insurance and fill in the potholes in your driveway if you invite people over to walk in your driveway. So you could write 5 of these one-pagers about people. You could write 10 about production things. The example I'm going to show you is just one of each. And I want to point to this one, the people goal, to show you that yes, indeed, you can plan to be happy in a business plan. And it's important to plan to be happy. With that appropriate balance of work and home life, I want to take Sundays off, could be Tuesdays, I don't care. And Charlie's my main guy who's there, who's agreed to come over on Sundays as a part-time employee, or maybe he's my right-hand man. I got to tell him what to do. I got to have a list of things for him to do. If you're here, you've probably done this kind of planning because somebody has to be at home doing what you would be doing if you weren't here. So this is not terribly complicated, but if you don't do it, you'll never be able to take a day off. And that whole, we'll get to the 5 Ds, right, of death, disaster, divorce. No, that's not all of them. I got them, I get it. You're covered. But if you don't plan for the enterprises and the household's success, you're thinking about your success or the farm business success only in your business plan, then you're leaving out most of what your life is. Most of your life hopefully is home and family and why you want to do this rather than being so focused on the business you can't think of anything else but that. Okay, the other side of the one-page business plan is the one-page financial plan. All these instructions come right on it. And I want you to focus on this side. It says historical, so this is my last year's results as and the example here I'm using is a small-scale vegetable production business that grosses $134,400 a year, selling at farmers markets, at CSA. It's small, right? Part-time, in fact. Yes, sir?
How small is small? 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres?
Good question. 134,000. If you did well, if you gross sales $13,000 an acre, that would be 10 acres. If you're really good at it, you can probably hit $20,000 an acre in sales in the Northeast anyway. If you're fantastic at it with niche crops, you can probably get to 30. So this is probably.
But this is for a northeastern growing season as opposed to 9 or 10 months that we would have down here.
Right. But
everybody grows things down here.
Good point.
Yeah.
Because
that's diluted in the market.
The results are also listed as a percentage of sales. So if that is my 100% of sales, I can compare this to any other business. I can compare it to Walmart.
Yeah.
Walmart's net profit, I mean, this is huge. We'll explain why it's huge in a minute. Walmart's net profit last quarter, I think, was 3.3%. Average grocery store, 2%. Average farm business, mature farm businesses in wholesale or in retail vegetables like this is probably 10%. CSA maybe 15% because they have lower marketing costs. This is huge. And the reason it's huge is the overhead is so low. This is on rented land. There's no overhead. I don't own a farm in this business. I am maximizing earnings in this example as a beginning farmer, because my point in telling you this and showing you this example is these financial results are built for a beginning farmer. Don't buy a farm. Don't buy a farm. Rent land and show earnings to yourself, to a lender, to a prospective partner, and keep your overhead costs low so that you can maximize your income so you can accumulate some dollars. And then next year when I'm budgeting, not only do I want to increase my, I want to get more money putting these two together, first 2 lines here. I want to earn $50,000 of profit because I want to buy a farm. That's what this example is about over here. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but bank principal payments required, $20,000 times a 20-year mortgage is I'm going to buy a $400,000 farm. What do I need? How do I know what I need to earn next year if I want to buy a farm? And that's what this calculation is. main point of this is that these 5 lines, sales minus cost of goods sold is gross margin, minus overhead is net margin. If you can't tell me that about your business, I would say you're probably not really in business. This defines you. This is your elevator speech about your business. If farmers as a group talked about this 5-line income statement as much as they talk about the cost of their inputs and the deal they got on fertilizer and the price of diesel fuel and their diseases, they spent half as much time talking about this, they would all be more profitable because they would know what they were doing when they woke up in the morning.
Here's the other thing that I think is really important about this, which is part of our goal setting is saying, okay, I want these things to happen. I want to send my kids to college. I want to be able to, we need, my wife puts up with a lot all year. We need to be able to take a trip once a year. We need to be able to go away. Here's what that's going to cost. That means in order for my business to be successful, I have to net X amount. And if you have that number, there's a joke that, I was joking before about how to make $1 million farming. It's not that hard to figure out what you have to do. If you're going to make $1 million farming, you have 10 acres, that means you have to net $100,000 per acre. At a 20% return, that means you have to gross $500,000 an acre, which means you have operating capital that you have to access of $400,000 an acre. But my point of doing that is not that anyone's really going to do that, but my point of doing that is that if you start with where you want to end, that tells you whether then you can go back upstream and it can tell you whether you're in the ballpark or not, right? What kind of volume do I have to do? That goes back to your question about how much money does it take for me to show up at a farmer's market? Right, $500, $200, $500, $1,000? How much money do you have to make in order to make that farmer's market worth it? This is where you start that calculation that says, I got to bring in this amount. Does that make sense here?
The reason that this number, gross margin, is in a special box here is because we use it in this formula over here. This is how you budget into the future, so you know your gross margins. Because this whole exercise is about separating your variable costs, or cost of goods sold, from your overhead costs. And we don't have to spend the time going into that. It's identified in here. Overhead costs you can think of as costs that you have that, whether you grow 1 tomato or 10 tons of tomatoes, the same thing. Insurance. Well, 35. Depreciation, interest, repairs, taxes, insurance. Things that happen whether you grow 1 tomato or 10 tons of tomatoes. If you grow 10 tons of tomatoes, your cost of goods sold, your variable costs go up. I got to buy more seed, got to buy more fertilizer, got to have more land rented, and that's the basic difference. The reason that you want to do that is so that you can establish your level of efficiency. What this says in percent of sales here is if you give me 60 cents, I'll turn it into $1 worth of sales. That's what you need to know. That's your efficiency, or you turn it upside down. That 40% is what you bring over here, and that's what you use to budget. That's why you need to do
I don't
that.
think I can formulate this, but you talked about you said you'd rather lease it or leasing this as opposed to owning a farm, and
As a beginning farm.
As a beginning farm, because it doesn't show up as a cost, or can you say that again?
I would like to see a beginning farmer, and you can answer this after I do. I would like to see a beginning farmer not own the farm because you get to try it. Do I want that lifestyle? Is the most important thing. The second most important thing is that you're not starting your business with a huge amount of debt. A mortgage payment that you have to make every month or every 6 months.
But you still have to pay the lease, right?
Still have to pay a lease, but that's a lot lower than a mortgage payment would be. And this demonstrates earnings. And if you want to be a farmer and you want to buy a farm, the best way to do it, remember I said to get a good job? This is a good job. You can net 33% from a small business like this. This is great. It's a great way to make money. This is a part-time business. Now everything's got to go right. But we'll see how right it has to go here. There's the same thing. Our 5-line income statement. Did I mention this was important? And I'm just going to put it on a spreadsheet there. Same information, I just reformatted it. And then here are those 5 lines again. Income minus variable costs equals gross margin minus fixed costs equals net margin or net profit. 5-line income statement again, and I've added my checkbook to it. The ending balance of my checkbook from January is the beginning balance of my checkbook in February. That's all this is. It's those 5 lines, and then I add my checkbook. Monthly cash flow is just the difference between beginning and ending. The point of this is that you're taking that 5-line income statement I showed you that's annual performance, and you're saying, okay, what happens in January? Then what happens in February? Because if you manage once a year, like those farmers, and insert story here about managing your finances by only doing your taxes once a year, and then you found out if you made money last year or not. I mean, that's a really bad way to do it because you can't adjust. In farming, you need to at least be at a monthly level. If you're in a business like a food hub, a wholesale produce, vegetable operation, perishables and all that, you have to do this daily because your margin is 2% on that kind of business, and it's so low and your costs are so high, you're putting a couple of $1 million through a food hub in order to earn a few tens of thousands of dollars. If you screw up and you don't correct for it within a day, you've just burned up your net profit for several months. For a farm business, going monthly is probably close enough.
So I'm going to pick up on something that you were talking about, the question that you asked about. What you said was, I want to see a beginning farmer lease land first, get that going, show income, show a business, get that experience, and then look over time at buying land. One of the things that we see a lot is young people who want to be farmers, who go to a beginning farmer program, and they go to 4 or 5 years of classes, and they go to a couple of years of internships, and then they do an apprenticeship, and they come in, and then they pop out 6 years in, and they've got a business plan from God, right? They've been working on their business plan for 6 years. They have their credit scores in the tank. They haven't held a steady job in 6 years because they've been doing internships and apprenticeships and taking classes. They have no assets whatsoever. There's not a bank on the face of the earth that's going to touch them. Well, then it should. So what we see is there are a couple of things that are really important to me in saying that. One is, yes, it is, what I see a lot is people who keep preparing, who prepare for a very long time. One of the important things is that part of what USDA and others look at is management experience. Management experience is not necessarily working on a farm unless you are managing a section of that farm. So if you're getting farming experience, if you're going to become a farmer and you're getting farming experience, one of the things that you want to work out with that farm owner is for you to take over, maybe take over a section of that farm. A friend of mine does this. If someone's worked for him for 2 or 3 years, they take over the cucumber operation. And that becomes significant for a couple of different reasons. That's management experience that they can then go to FSA and say, I have 2 years of management experience. Because in order to get a beginning farmer loan, you need 3. So I've already got 2. The other part, and so part of it is, and this is a part of the goal set, which is, I think that land ownership is a very important thing as a goal. I think it's a very important part of the process, and there are a lot of, frankly, I'm not a huge believer in incubators, I'm not a huge believer in a lot of stuff like that, because I think it stretches out this process of sort of dabbling, which often does not get people in a position to be able to own land over time. If you come from a family of wealth, and there's nothing wrong, generational transfer of wealth has been a part of the farm transition forever. People hand down the farm. It's, absolutely nothing disparaging on it. But if you come from a position of wealth and you look to inherit land or something like that, then focusing on those issues of, how do I know how to do it, those kinds of things, that's cool because you got the other stuff taken care of. But if you don't, then frequently knowing how to farm is not going to be the limiting factor. Having the finances and having your finances and, a really good business plan, all it means is that the banker will turn you down in 20 minutes instead of 10. Because they'll sit there and go, wow, this is a really good business. I'm not going to lend you any money, but this is a really good business. And we see that a lot. We see a lot of young folks who spend all their time focused on their business plan and the knowledge of how to farm and not understanding what they have to put together in order to be able to have access to that kind of credit.
Which at a minimum would be about 30% down payment.
Right.
We're not talking a 5% VA loan or anything like that. It takes a huge amount of capital to be able to get a farm loan because it's a commercial loan. Try to go borrow money for a pizza business. It's the same, well, it's worse. Because the loss potential is so high. Bankers hate to lose money. We'll explain that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Pretty picture. This is a friend in New Hampshire. When I left New Hampshire, this business was grossing about $300,000 a year, netting probably, I would guess, 45,000. Spouse worked also. They had part-time jobs, doing 4 farmers markets a week. So it's very much in this sort of range of what we're talking about. Here's that 5-line income. Did I mention this was important? I'm just stretching it out to be monthly. I know you can't see the numbers, but it's just taking the 5 lines. Total income minus cost of goods sold equals gross margin minus overhead is net margin. Same stuff, just stretched out over the entire year every month and has the checkbook at the bottom. And this is a CSA type business, so if you can see that, total income or sales $10,200 in January. Variable cost, 0. Net profit, $10,200. This is great. This is why CSAs exist. I just got $10,000 and I haven't done a damn thing. This is cool. Only in America. And I did it in February, and I did almost as much in March. That's the benefit of a CSA. Is you're getting your money up front, so you don't have to borrow those costs that you start to accumulate as you start to grow and then produce a crop. Which, by the way, is why we're doing this exercise. Okay, it's going to get scary. This is downloadable. Go home, download this, play with it. If you're not familiar with spreadsheets, these little pluses and minuses here, you can expand this so that there's more information there. It shows you more of what you need to record, and if you don't like looking at it, you push the minus button and it goes away. And you're left with the 5 lines, essentially, and a little bit more.
And are the 5 lines important there?
I think those 5, that's why they're in green, by the way. Here on this one also, because there are the 5 lines and then the checkbook. This is how you run a business. Yes?
Did you say that was downloadable from somewhere?
It's a live spreadsheet from farmbiztrainer.com. Under the resources tab, one-pagers. All of the numbers in there are much less important than the concept of the 5 lines. If you choke at the idea of seeing a spreadsheet like this, just look at the 5 lines. Run your life by those 5 lines of total sales minus cost of goods sold is gross margin minus overhead is net margin.
So part of how we build this was looking at how you answer questions, right? Questions about how do I know when it's the right time to quit my job? How do I know when it's the right time to invest in things? And how do I know if I'm headed in the right direction? One of the first pieces about how do I know whether I'm in the right direction, going in the right direction, financially, is the bottom line of that chart. What is my, and with obviously, here, all of it comes in the front, then it's going to go down from there. Obviously, you want to know what that is, what those patterns are over time, but looking at where that is over time.
So, quick and dirty. I know you have a hard time seeing the numbers. If I want to do this business, like I got somebody else's business plan, right? For this business, I'm going to do this business. I need to start beginning cash checking balance with $21,500, and then I can get to the end of the year, and I've got $43,000 in net profit, and I've still got $21,000 in my checking account. And my checking account goes up and down over the course of the year, and I need to know when that happens so I know when to put money in the checking account, or possibly when to borrow. If my sales are way down here on the income side, because I've got fruit sales and farmers market sales, if I miss a few farmers markets because of rain, and all of a sudden I don't have the $14,000 of income that I was expecting because it was a really rainy month, the heck am I going to do? Because that $14,000 is minus $14,000 from this 43 that I was expecting to make at the end. I gotta do something about it. What am I gonna do? What do I have to change? And that's the whole point of knowing what this is monthly, so you can manage a living, biological change management thing. Well, this is business change management. That's what you're in the business. It's so much easier to manage this than it is to grow a crop. Growing a crop is hard to do. I mean, granted, every little carrot seed wants to grow up and be a carrot, and that's what they do, and they love being a carrot, and that's, this is a lot easier than the growing, but people don't pay attention to this. It's setting their expectations so that when the growing part doesn't meet expectations, when there's fungus and phytophthora and hurricane or whatever it is, you can't manage that stuff so well. But you can manage this, and people don't pay attention to this. Okay, here's the actual flow. If you write all of that down, and this is all on one line, and just split it out so that will get you right to the exact page that I've been talking about.
Do you want to also do the incremental piece about like how do I know if I can should buy a tractor? Since we're on those things, since we're on the spreadsheet piece. Does everybody have that? Okay. So while Gary's moving stuff around, let me ask real quick, we're about an hour in and a little over an hour in. Is this helpful? Are we doing okay so far? Are there things are there questions that you've got that we're not getting at yet? Is this like, this isn't helping, or is there anything that's just really weighing on your mind that's like, okay, yeah, well that's nice, but I really want to know this. Is there anything like that I just want to make sure